How's it going, people? Welcome back to another new video and thanks for tuning in again. So before, I made a tutorial about how to use shutter speed, aperture, ISO to control the exposure of your camera. And based on that, we can say the ND filter can be very strong and useful when you do both of video and photo. Well, for those of you who doesn't know anything about ND filter, basically it's like a sunglass to control the brightness, the exposure of your camera, without touching ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. So today, what I'm gonna introduce you guys is this Motion Pro variable ND filter from SANDMARK, sponsored by SANDMARK. Okay, so SANDMARK makes a great camera gear such as iPhone lenses and filters, light and camera filters, and GoPro gears, which I made a review before. This, the motion variable ND filter for GoPro Hero 9. So if you're a GoPro or iPhone heavy user, the SANDMARK is something you should go through. So just go visit their website. There are many useful gears that you might be interested in. But this time I'm gonna talk about this ND filter for camera such as Sony A7III or Canon R5. I don't know about Canon, but the mirrorless camera or any other cameras just like this. So you can choose your filter thread from 82, 77, 67, and 58mm. So what I have now is 82mm for Sigma 2470. So basically this filter has two major functions. One of them is ND8 to 64 filter function. A second is motion blur effect. But I'm gonna deep dive into them later one by one, but first let's focus on build quality. So like last time when I did the review of the filter for GoPro Hero 9, this looks solid, I mean, when I touch it, I can know this thing is designed so well. What I like about this is this industrial grade aluminum frame. It's very nice to touch, but at the same time it's very thin and light, so actually you don't have to worry about gaining weight, and it attaches to the lens very easily. Basically you just screw in, and of course it has the numbers 3, 4, 5, 6 stops. I guess they mean ND8, 16, 32, and 64. But honestly, I think it's much easier to understand where you are if they are actually 8, 16, 32, 64 rather than 3, 4, 5, 6. But anyway, this frame is designed so well, I can tell. Also, this ring has a grip that can hold your finger, and it has a good amount of weight on it, not too light and not too heavy. Also, I don't know any other variable ND filters, but you can't put the lens cap on it. Well, actually this is very huge thing for me. I sometimes hang the camera here or here when I'm hiking. If the glass is always exposed, I have to worry about scratch or damage on this glass, or the fingerprint, which I really hate. So I'm gonna put this ND filter on the lens whenever I need it, and after I use that, I'm gonna have to take it off every time. So I think SANDMARK really should work on this, like making this filter accept the lens cap on it. But in total, this filter is designed so well, as I said, except that lens cap thing. This is my second SANDMARK product, and I can say the build quality is always solid and reliable. Okay, next we're gonna focus on the ND function. So mainly this is a ND filter which can lower the exposure by putting it on the lens, and with this variable ND filter you can control ND from 8 to 64 by moving the ring, meaning you can decide how much light you take in. For example, with fixed camera setting, 1/50 shutter speed and f2.8 aperture and 800 ISO. So this is without ND, and this is ND8, 16, 32, and 64. So why do we need to use ND filter? Like, hey Ken, you told us that we could control the exposure by shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, didn't you? If it's too bright, we can deal with them by, them. Yeah, yes and no. Actually, if it's too bright, you can speed up shutter speed to lower the exposure. But don't you remember something? What is the, ideal shutter speed when you film at 24 FPS? Yeah? What is that? 1/50 seconds. That way the motion will be natural. Look at this again. The flow of water is kind of, weird. choppy, but also I didn't want to go upper aperture like over 10 because I wanted a little bit of blur, background blur. So use ND filter, and the setting is 1/50 shutter speed and f4.5 ISO 800. Also this case, I wanted to shoot the digital shot, like solo shot of this. Okay, what can I do? Speed up shutter speed? Of course not. To change the aperture like 10. No, it had to be f2.8 to get blurred background, to emphasize this object, to separate this object from background. f2.8, this is necessary. So again, use the ND filter to do what I want to film, to do the camera setting that I need to express what I want. So like those, if you have ND filter, you can control shutter speed and aperture, which relate to the expression of the image without thinking of the exposure. You can leave it to the ND filter and you can focus on the how you want to express that moment. And what I like about this ND filter is its depiction. Left side is without ND and right side is with ND. So is there any color or sharpness difference? Well, as I see, I can't find any big difference. Well, the footage with ND has a little tiny bit of orange yellow, but it's too small thing to care. Actually, I can't see like a big difference, and sharpness, I think they're pretty much same. So the depiction ability of this filter is very true to the real colors. I guess this is because of this filter has a very high quality glass. So according to their website, the glass is engineered from a cinema glass true to live colors and avoiding the vignette. Anyway, as I use the image through this filter is pretty much same as without a filter. And for autofocus, okay, first this is without ND. And this is with ND. Well, how about that? I don't see any difference. Very impressive. I'm not 100% sure cause I only tested under this location and condition, but my feedback about this is pretty good. So let's forget about a video for a while and let's focus on the photo. So in photography, basically the use of this filter is pretty much same as a video. But when this ND filter becomes most powerful and useful is when you do the long exposed photography. Long exposed photography. When you do that, you make shutter speed very slow, like below 1 second. So of course it gets super bright, but don't want to change the aperture at the same time. So pretty much the ND filter is necessary when you do the long exposed photography at the daytime outside. And about motion blur, honestly, with my footages, it's very hard to identify the motion blur in them. And in photography, I don't know if there is additional motion blur because of this filter. Anyway, it's flowing. In video, well, I guess there are some. Like watching the water is flowing on the rock, I feel it has some motion blur, but nice, motion blur. Not weird, not unnatural, very small amount of motion blur. But honestly, I'm good with this because I want to use this filter as like simple variable ND filter, like not as a crazy, effect, crazy motion blur effect. So this small extra bonus that can make a footage a little bit better, a little bit cinematic is just fine. So you don't want to think this filter as some motion blur effect filter. Like I said, mainly this is a variable ND filter with a little bit of extra bonus. Okay, so that was it. Well, considering all aspects of this product, I think I can say this thing is very high quality ND filter, especially this glass and the frame, the build quality. The depiction through this filter is really true to live colors. I'm not reading website. I really thought like that. I really felt like that. My honest feedback. There was no weird colors, sharpness changes or vignette. I'm so glad this filter focused on only exposure. But definitely also there is one thing that I didn't like about this filter, such as the thing that I can't put the lens cap on it. Only that. Almost. And personally, the motion blur effect, I don't really need that. More than that, I really need a lens cap. So with $160, what can you achieve? What can you do? It totally depends on you. You know, you can get things under control, so you should do your role. So that's my advice to you, bro. Whose song is this? OK。よし。GO! めっちゃなんか喉が腫れるわ。これはね、マジ提供を受けてるからといって別にひいきしたわけじゃなくて、マジでめちゃめちゃ良かったんだよ。でも本当にこのレンズキャップつけれねえのはマジでちょっとダメだね。そこは飽きません。そこはダメですわ。傷ついちゃうしね。まあでも物としてはめっちゃ良かった。さあ、ご応募よ、ご応募。やべ、に全然喋れなかった。はい。あっちんだよ。だから。終わり。